Hello everybody, Mr. Pilgrim here, coming at you with a brand new Platinum Trophy guide, and that is going to be for Rogue Legacy. Basically, just going to be a full detailed guide on how to get all the trophies and how to go about doing certain things as you play through the game. This will at least require a total of 3 or so playthroughs, one of which is going to have to be on a brand new save, but I am going to go into detail about that when you're more prepared and are more familiar with how the game plays and how it works. So for now, you're just going to want to start. I highly recommend going and playing through the tutorial before you do anything, because that'll help you get more familiar with how the character works and plays. Now, every time you load in, there is eventually going to be a character that you can unlock later on who will make sure that your maps stay the same. That way, in case you die, it's not random again. But there is a certain point where that's not going to matter, as your damage and all that is just going to be a-okay. So, starting off, I'm going to try and go through most of the first area, which is just going to be the basic castle, and try and clear it out as best as I can. Try and give you guys an idea of how the map looks and things, and if there's any special rooms, I will definitely try and save those for you guys so you can get an idea. So for now, just try and get familiarized with how the game works. Try and explore. If you happen to die right now, that is perfectly okay. You can make mistakes right now. It's not going to affect any trophies, so don't worry about that. So I'm now going to skip to anything of importance in the first area. This will also be a good time for you to learn attack patterns and things, enemies that can spawn in the first area, and just things like that. And I will also be going over the first boss that you will have to fight, which there's, 4 main bosses and then the 5th and final boss. And there's a couple of secret bosses I'll talk about later on. But don't worry about that just yet. For now, let's play the game. Alright, so early on as you're exploring through the castle, you will find sometimes these silver chests. Now these normally, during your first playthrough, will always normally have blueprints, as you can see like so. Blueprints are new equipment pieces that you can get and then equip to your character. That way you can have better gear, stuff like that, And you will also eventually come across the boss door, well, which I'm more or less just going to show you the boss right now. And that is going to be Hitter, the Gatekeeper. He's a pretty standard boss. But, my character is a little larger and I'm still getting familiar with how the game works, so I'm going to switch now to when I actually have a better setup. I will go into detail about some things. So eventually you will have, as you can see here, some characters do have other things. And one thing I will mention is if you happen to find the electrophobia trait, definitely take it, as that will be linked to one of the trophies in the game. Now, while you also have the opportunity, you'll want to eventually unlock the Shinobi. You don't need to get the Hokage, but that'll be more of something else entirely. Now, as you'll see out here, you have your blacksmith, who has all of your new weapons and things like that. Chests, armor, things. As you can see, our new armor piece will actually give us vampirism. That will basically allow you to get HP back from defeating enemies. Here you have the Enchantress. She will allow you to have runes that are pretty helpful, especially early on. And then this is the Architect. He basically allows you to lock the castle down at any point in time, and every single time right now that you re-enter the castle, you will lose all of your money. So just keep that in mind. So now I'm going to skip back to when we find the boss, and then if there's any other chests and stuff like that to talk about. Alright, so on one small side note, now the reason why I said whenever you're looking at traits to look out for the electrophobia is when randomly breaking objects, a Kentucky will spawn, and what you want to do is basically to kill that, and then that will grant you HP and a trophy. So as you can see, I'm trying my best here to not take damage, and boom, just like that, you will get a trophy. So you'll want to keep an eye out for that. It's a very handy trait to go for, as getting HP back randomly is nice, but do be careful, as the chicken itself can also deal damage to you and can kill you if your HP is low enough and you don't have any armor. So just keep that in mind. So now we're going to move on to, like I said, boss and things like that. So probably another thing that you'll want to make sure is that you actually are getting runes and stuff like that along the way. You definitely want to get the sprint rune and double jump early on. That'll definitely make your life easier, as you can now have more mobility. And then just whatever else you think you need is really going to be a key factor here. Anything that gives you armor is always nice, as that will reduce the damage that enemies do to you. Or you could just say screw it and go for just more damage. Me being me, I like having some armor and some protection. So yeah, so now we're going to skip to actually fighting the boss. Like I said, getting a shinobi is actually going to be really good for just clearing things and stuff like that, as they hit pretty hard, and if you put some points into just your basic damage while in your castle, it really pays off early on. So yeah, so now we're going to skip to that boss fight. Actually, on one small side note, right before the boss is, you will eventually come across rooms that will say fairy chest objective. Most of these are pretty simple. Some of them are a little bit confusing, and some of them are pretty annoying to deal with. And those are going to be how you unlock more runes for your character to equip on your slots. You will eventually need to get a rune on every single piece, so your head, you know, just all the general stuff, and that will also be another trophy. So, for example, this room right here is just defeat all the enemies, and it's going to be a pretty large room, and I'm just going to skip to when I do that and then open up the chest so you can see, you know, how they look. Actually, I keep dying before I can actually get some good clear going, but another thing that you're also going to want to look out for is taking a air that has no traits. That will also be another trophy that you're just going to want to look out for. So if you have the option of getting it, then by all means, get it. Might as well get as many trophies as you can out of the way, right? So yeah. Okay, so the next thing to talk about is more or less going to be mini bosses. They'll appear in these rooms that are like the purple question marks you'll see as I'm about to enter right here. These enemies can be a bit tough, so if you aren't feeling up to it, you don't have to fight them. It is recommended that you do, because you will eventually have to defeat all of them, and that will get you another trophy. I will go into more detail after showcasing all of the bosses on things you can do before beating the game, as there's some optional stuff that you actually have to do in order to unlock some of the trophies, and then there's things that you can do before going into New Game Plus, which you will have to do, and then you'll also have to go into New Game Plus 2. So just keep that in mind. If you happen to come across these mini bosses, you can always leave. You're not locked into fighting them. So don't worry about that just yet. Alright, so another thing, like I said, I ended up dying before I could get the fairy chest, but I finally made it to one, and as you will see, I got the sprint rune on my headpiece. So this is what it looks like. There will be a thing, like I said, in-game stuff that I'll talk about and come back to these fairy chests, so do keep that in mind. So now we can finally move on to the first boss, and then we will go over details about the second, third, and fourth areas. So yeah. Alright, so now we're finally going to take on the first boss. I feel like I've tried to record this bit at least so many times now, and it just does not work. as you can see, once you get familiar with his patterns and things, it is not too bad. It's just going to be about proper spacing and just getting your right jump height. And eventually you will defeat your first boss, and every time you defeat the bosses for the first time, you will get these big chests which will give you random stat ups, which is always nice. Sometimes it can be really bad, sometimes it can be pretty good. You can get strength, HP, MP. You can also get weight load, stuff like that, which is pretty cool. And as you'll see right here, we have defeated one of the first 4 bosses. So now the next thing that you're trying to do is go to the forest area. And the forest area is always going to be to the right of the castle. As you'll see right here. Whew! Just trying to show it off. So we're going to go back and fully explore and stuff like that. So now, when you go to a new area, you're basically going to either see 1 or 2 new enemy types, and then you're going to see upgraded versions of previous enemies, or you're going to see more common enemies in those areas. So, like in the forest, you're now going to start seeing green mages, which can cause gravity or giant stones to appear below you and come up and try and attack you from the ground. Stuff like that. Or you're going to find shielded knights who have spike balls attached to them. You know, things like that. You're just going to eventually encounter more and more enemies that are going to be doing more damage to you, but the payoff for defeating them is going to be a little bit better gold-wise. So now we're going to move on to the second boss, and that is going to be Alexander in the forest area. And like I said, right now, just going to be playing through. If there's anything of importance that I haven't already mentioned or talked about, I will then add it in between now and then. There's probably only a couple other things to really talk about for right now, so yeah. Okay, so the next important thing to note is that after defeating all of the main bosses except for one specific one, you will then eventually be able to find the obols for them. You'll need to hold on to these and then eventually die with them, and then give them to Karan, the guy who stops you every time before you enter back, and he will say, "Oh ho ho," he'll say some words, and then if you actually make your way back to the bosses that you've already defeated, the doors will be reopened for a secret boss fight, which I will go into more detail later about, and stuff like that. So just keep that in mind. So defeat the 4 bosses. Before defeating the final boss, you'll have some cleanup stuff that you can do before heading into New Game Plus. So just keep that in mind. Alright, so the next boss that you'll have to face is going to be Alexander. He's not too terrible, but he can summon ads that can make the fight a little bit annoying. But if you happen to have some lifesteal, as you can see, having a bit of lifesteal definitely makes the difference here. But because we are a shinobi, we deal plenty of damage. Also, I forgot to mention that defeating all of these 4 main bosses will also get you a trophy in itself. So there is that, just to keep in mind. But that'll be the second boss, and as you can see, we didn't get that much good stats from this boss fight, but that's okay. And we will have our second. So now we have to go to the tower, which will be back above the castle area. So yeah. So there's probably only one more main thing to talk about aside from the little secret bosses and things like that, and that is going to be a mini game that you will randomly come across, and it's the clown mini game. It'll be found in those secret rooms that actually have the little question marks, um, like the ones that you see on my map, the question mark rooms. Those can be a variety of things, so eventually once you're able to fully clear the entirety of the map without dying once, then it will be a lot easier for you to do things and clean up other things as well. So just keep that in mind. So now we're going to move on to the second area or third area and show you that boss. Okay, so the next other thing that I forgot to mention is that if you do happen to find a unique thing from the Karen statues, it'll look like a black compass and can find the door and go into it. That will give you a gold chest, or if you happen to defeat the mini bosses, those will also give you a gold chest. And upon opening one of those gold chests, you will also get a trophy. They look like this. They can be a assortment of items from blueprints to stat-ups, similar to other things that you will find just throughout the game. So yeah. Alright, so the last thing to really talk about that you'll have to just hope that you can find when playing through is the carnival game or the clown game. Now, there are two different versions of the clown game that you can find. One of them being the dagger game and the other one being the axe game. What you basically want to have it be is the axe game, as that one is a lot easier to do better at. But I'll just show you what it looks like in the end. As you can see, I did not get lucky, and we ended up getting the the target game. But basically, you have to succeed at least getting all of the targets, because as you can see, even though I hit more than 8 of them, or at least most of them, he does not reward you with it. If I happen to get the other minigame, I will include it, but basically you have to do really well, and then you will get a gold chest from him. If you hadn't already gotten a gold chest trophy, that will get you 2 in one go. So yeah. Alright, so the next thing to also mention is that you want to make sure that you have something equipped in all of your rune slots. You don't have to, it doesn't matter what you have, you just have to at least have one thing equipped in each of these. Same goes for your blacksmith. You want to make sure that you at least have one piece of gear equipped in one of these, and that'll be 2 more trophies down, and then we can now finally move on to the third boss of the game. Alright, so now we're finally going to be moving on to the third boss of the game, and that is going to be Ponce de Leon. This can be a frustrating fight because you can get some bad arena RNG, as you can see right here. But it is not too bad. I did upgrade my Shinobi into a Hokage. Downside being is that I can no longer crit, but I think it's well worth it in the end. We're finally able to get a dub on him, and let's see what all we got. HP, MP, and some armor. That's always nice. That'll be the third boss down. Now, if you're having trouble, you can always try and use the Architect to help you find where to go to figure out where each boss might be. You can use a Spelunker, and that will give you access to seeing the full map. Then you can just look where the double chests are and be on your merry little way. Now, this is probably the best trait setup that I could have gotten for this Hokage is that he has PAD, so I don't set off the sensitive floor traps, which is really nice. But from here, it's basically just making your way to the fourth and final area, and that is going to be fighting the fourth boss, and that is going to be the southernmost area, the Land of Darkness, and that is a pretty tough area, especially when you have like no like armor or gear that's really good. But like always, anything that happens from here to there, I will gladly inform you guys and keep you posted. And yeah. Alright, so we're going to be taking on the fourth boss, Herodotus. I'm going to go into a little bit of detail about the boss before I show off the boss fight itself, as it can be a bit frustrating to try and deal with, especially your first couple of times, as there's a lot of things going into this fight that are just working against you. For one, when you do enough damage to his health bar, he doesn't fully die. Instead, he splits into two smaller, eventually just splitting into really small slimes that like to jump around and can catch you off guard. And every time you split him, up until a certain point, he can summon those green mages that use earth magic to try and deal damage to you. It's frustrating. And then there are also spikes in the ground, and that is also a pain. So, for the sake of things, I'm probably just going to skip to showing off the gameplay of me beating him. That way you can see how I do it and trying to go into detail while trying to do it. So yeah. Alright, and as you can finally see, I finally have beaten Herodotus. Do remember to check all of the arena before opening the chest, as this will give you some more gold and things like that. So now we have defeated the first four main bosses, and basically now all that's left is just some side stuff that you have to do. Which I will probably go into more detail in the second video, as I feel like this one is already getting long enough. There's probably only going to be one more thing I'm going to add into this video, and that is just going to be showing off the clown minigame, the other version, and how to beating that. So yeah, so once I find that and get to show you guys, I will. One more thing I will mention though is you want to make sure that you have at least put one single point into every tree, and that will also get you a trophy. And then there is one last one up here, and it's called Bestiality. And then this one is also related to another trophy, and that is simply to play as that character. So that's 3 trophies in total that require you to play as specifically characters with unique classes and traits. There is a fourth one, but that one will probably come in the second video that I will do. So yeah. Alright, and like I said, the last thing I'm going to show off is going to be the other Clown Carnival game, and that is going to be the end of this first video. As you'll see right here, basically what you can do is before you get into the area, you can just try and get rid of as many as you can. It'll cost you your mana, of course, but that is perfectly fine. So now what you're supposed to do is try and just destroy at least a good portion of most of these. As you can see, like so. As you'll see, if you did it right, you have to leave no more than 10 targets, and then you will get a gold chest, and then you will also get a trophy. But anyways, that is going to conclude the first video in our Platinum Trophy Guide for Rogue Legacy. This is the first one, not the second one. But anyways, I hope that this is helpful, or at least informative, and I will see you all in the next one.